The cold metal halls of the Zephyrian research ship hummed with quiet energy as Dr. Cathara studied the readings on her screen. Her blue fingers moved across the control panel while her large yellow eyes focused on the strange object floating in the darkness ahead. "Captain Voss," she called out in her soft voice, "the scans are complete." "It is definitely a human vessel." Captain Voss walked over to her station. His tall frame cast a shadow over the smaller scientist. Like all Zephyrians, his skin had a pale blue color and his eyes were much larger than a human's would be. But unlike Cathara, who spent her time studying other life forms, Voss had fought in battles. He had seen what humans could do. "We should leave," he said firmly. "The Council has given clear orders about human ships. We report their location." "And move on? We do not board them?" Cathara turned to face him. "But Captain, this could be the chance we have been waiting for. We have never had access to a real human vessel before. Think about what we could learn." "I'm thinking about what we could lose," Voss replied. "Our lives, for one thing." The doctor's eyes grew even larger with excitement. "The ship appears to be dead, no power readings, no life signs. It has been drifting here for months, maybe years. What harm could there be in taking a look?" Voss stared at the floating ship on the main screen. It looked small compared to their research vessel. The human ship was dark gray and had a simple design. It did not look dangerous, but Voss knew that looks could lie, especially when it came to humans. "The stories about humans are just that," Cathara continued. "Stories. Fear passed down from one generation to the next." "How can we call ourselves? Scientists if we let fear stop us from learning?" The bridge crew listened to their conversation. Most of them were young Zephyrians who had never seen a human ship before. They looked curious but also nervous. "Dr. Cathara," said Communications Officer Zex from his station, "I am reading the ship's identification codes. It is called the Steady Progress, according to the Galactic Registry. It was a cargo vessel carrying medical supplies to the outer rim colonies. Medical supplies," Cathara repeated. "You see, Captain, not a warship. Just a simple cargo hauler that got into trouble." Voss remained quiet for a long moment. He had been in space for over 20 years. He had seen many strange things and had learned to trust his feelings. Right now, those feelings told him to stay away from the human ship. But he also knew that Cathara was one of the best scientists in their fleet. Her research had helped many species understand each other better. "The ship has been sending out a weak distress signal," Zex added. "It repeats every 6 hours? If they are in trouble, should we not help them?" asked one of the younger crew members. Voss looked around the bridge. His crew was looking at him with expectant faces. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. They had joined this mission to discover new things, not to run away from them. "Fine," he said at last, "but we take every precaution. Full environmental suits, weapons ready. And at the first sign of trouble, we leave immediately." Cathara smiled. "Thank you, Captain. I promise we will be careful." 2 hours later, Cathara found herself floating in space between the two ships. Her environmental suit felt bulky and made movement difficult, but it would keep her alive if something went wrong. Behind her, 3 security officers and an engineering specialist followed in their own suits. The human ship looked even stranger up close. Its hull was covered in small dents and scratches, as if it had been through many difficult journeys. Strange symbols were painted near what appeared to be the main airlock. Cathara had studied human writing before, but these symbols were different from anything she had seen. "The airlock appears to be functional," reported Engineer Takmas. "I can override the safety systems and get us inside." "Do it," Cathara said. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Emergency lights came on inside, casting red shadows on the walls. The team moved carefully into the ship. The first thing Cathara noticed was the smell. Even through her suit's filters, she could detect something strange in the air. It was not the usual smell of a ship that had been closed up for a long time. This was something else. "Something organic?" "The corridors are clear," reported Security Chief Nelter. "But I'm reading some unusual energy signatures deeper in the ship." They moved through the narrow hallways. The human ship was much smaller inside than Zephyrian vessels. Everything seemed designed for beings much shorter than themselves. They had to duck to avoid hitting their heads on the low ceiling. "The bridge should be this way," Cathara said. Following the ship's basic layout that they had studied before boarding, when they reached the bridge, they found it empty. The control panels were dark except for a few blinking lights. A single chair sat in the center of the room, sized for a human. On one of the screens, text scrolled slowly in human writing. "Can you read it?" asked Nalter. Cathara moved closer to the screen. It says, "Day 847 of the journey. The crew is adapting well to the new protocols. Dr. Chun reports that the modification process is ahead of schedule. We should reach the target zone within 3 weeks. Modification process?" Takmas repeated. "What kind of modifications?" Before anyone could answer, they heard a sound from deeper in the ship. It was a low humming noise like machinery running on low power. "I thought you said the ship was dead," Nalter said to Cathara. "The scans showed no major power sources," she replied. "But there might be emergency systems still running." They followed the sound through more corridors until they reached what appeared to be the cargo bay. The doors were sealed, but Takmas was able to open them after a few minutes of work. The cargo bay was much larger than expected. Rows of metal containers lined the walls, each one labeled with codes and symbols. But what caught their attention was the equipment in the center of the room. Large machines sat in the middle of the bay, connected by thick cables and tubes. They looked like medical equipment, but somehow wrong. The design was too complex, too advanced for simple medical work. "These are not medical supplies," Nalter said quietly. Cathara approached one of the machines. Its surface was smooth and dark, with several viewing windows along the side. She peered through one of the windows and gasped. Inside the machine was a fluid-filled chamber. And floating in that fluid was something that had once been human, but was no longer entirely so. The body had been changed in ways that made Cathara's stomach turn. Extra limbs had been added, the bones had been altered. The skin had a strange, metallic sheen. "Captain," she whispered into her communication device, "you need to see this." "What did you find?" Voss's voice came back through static. "I'm not sure, but I think we need to get the entire science team over here." She moved to the next machine and looked inside. This one contained something even more disturbing. It appeared to be a mix of human and something else. Something that looked almost like a Zephyrian. "Dr. Cathara," Takmas called from across the bay. "I found the ship's main computer core. It appears to be intact." They gathered around the computer terminal. Takmas plugged in his portable interface and began downloading data. "There are thousands of files here," he reported. "Research notes, experiment logs, communication records. This will take some time to process." "Download everything," Cathara ordered. "We need to understand what the humans were doing here." As the data transfer continued, she explored more of the cargo bay. Each container held different supplies, but not the kind she expected. Instead of medicine and food, she found genetic modification equipment, biological samples, and substances she did not recognize. "Dr. Cathara," Nalter called from near the bay doors. "I found something else." She joined him at a smaller chamber near the back of the bay. Inside, they found what appeared to be a communication station. The equipment was still active, displaying a message that repeated every few minutes. "Can you translate it?" Nalter asked. Cathara studied the text carefully. Her knowledge of human languages was better than most Zephyrians, but this message used terms she had never seen before. It says ... Phase 1 complete. All subjects successfully adapted. Proceeding to target coordinates. Expect Phase 2 initiation upon arrival. The garden is ready for planting. What does that mean? Takmas asked from the computer terminal. I do not know, Cathara replied. But I have a feeling we are not going to like the answer. The data download finished, and they prepared to leave the human ship. But as they moved back toward the airlock, Cathara noticed something that made her stop. On the wall near the exit was a map of the local star systems. Red marks indicated various planets and stations. But what caught her attention was that many of those marks were on Zephyrian colonies. "Tokmas," she said slowly. "How long ago did this ship stop transmitting?" The engineer checked his readings. "According to the power logs, about 8 months ago." "And where were they headed?" Tokmas consulted the navigation data he had downloaded. The course was set for the Kepler station. That is the main research facility in this sector. Cathara felt a chill run through her body. Kepler station was home to over 50,000 Zephyrians and other species. It was also where the Galactic Council conducted most of its scientific research. "We need to contact the station immediately," she said. "Why?" Naltar asked. "What is wrong?" Cathara looked back at the map on the wall. The red marks seemed to glow in the dim light. "I think the humans were not just carrying cargo," she said. "I think they were delivering something or someone." They returned to their ship quickly and safely. But as Cathara began to study the data they had collected, she realized that their discovery was just the beginning. The files contained information that would change everything they thought they knew about humans. And more importantly, it would explain why so many species across the galaxy had learned to fear them. Captain Voss found her in the research lab several hours later, still staring at the screen. "What did you find?" he asked. Cathara turned to face him. Her large eyes were filled with something Voss had never seen before in his calm, scientific colleague: fear. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think we need to warn everyone." Dr. Cathara had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes burned as she stared at the screen in front of her, but she could not stop reading. The data from the human ship contained secrets that made her question everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. "Doctor, you need to rest," said her assistant Telavi. The younger Zephyrian carried a tray of food that had gone cold hours ago. "You have been working without a break since we returned from the ship." "I cannot rest," Cathara replied, without looking away from her screen. "Not when I am learning things like this." She pointed to a document that filled her monitor. It was written in human language, but her computer had translated most of it. The title read, "Earth Historical Archive, Classification Level 7. What does it say?" Telavi asked, setting the food tray down beside the keyboard. "It tells the story of the human homeworld," Cathara said. "But not the story they told the Galactic Council when they joined 50 years ago." Telavi pulled up a chair beside her mentor. Like all Zephyrians, she had been taught that humans were a peaceful species who had learned to cooperate after nearly destroying themselves in wars. The official record said that humans had evolved beyond their violent nature and now sought only knowledge and friendship among the stars. "According to this," Cathara continued, "humans were never the peaceful farmers and scientists they claimed to be. They were hunters, predators, and they were very good at it." The screen showed images from human history, pictures of wars, weapons, and destruction on a scale that made Telavi feel sick. But what disturbed her more was how organized it all looked. These were not random acts of violence. This was systematic killing. "Every species fights sometimes," Telavi said. "Even we Zephyrians had conflicts in our past." "Yes, but look at this," Cathara said, opening another file. "This document talks about what they call the food chain on their home planet. Every other species on Earth was either food for humans or competition to be eliminated." Telavi read over the translated text. It described how humans had spread across their entire planet, hunting the largest animals to extinction and changing the environment to suit their needs. They had not learned to live with nature. They had conquered it, but that was long ago, Telavi said. Before they developed space travel, surely they changed as they grew more advanced. Cathara opened another file. This one was more recent, dated only 60 years ago. This was a record of something called the Great Silence. For 50 years, all human communication with space stopped. No transmissions, no signals, nothing. Then suddenly they appeared again and asked to join the Galactic Council. What happened during those 50 years? That is what I'm trying to find out, Cathara said. But the files from that time period are heavily encrypted. I can only read fragments. She showed Telavi several documents that appeared on her screen, for just moments before disappearing again. The words that Telavi could catch made her nervous. Global Unification, Enhanced Human Project. Preparation for Contact. And most disturbing of all, Species Integration Protocols. "Doctor," came Captain Voss's voice over the communication system. "Please report to the bridge." "We are receiving." A priority message from Galactic Command. Cathara and Telavi made their way to the bridge, where they found the crew gathered around the main screen. Admiral Vexaran, a senior member of the Galactic Council, appeared on the display. His wrinkled face looked more serious than usual. "Captain Voss," the Admiral said, "we have received your report about the human vessel. The Council has decided that this information is too dangerous to be shared openly." "With respect, Admiral," Captain Voss replied, "Dr. Cathara believes this information could be important for the safety of all species in the galaxy." Admiral Vexarana's expression did not change. "Dr. Cathara, you are ordered to turn over all data from the human ship to Council security forces. A ship will meet you at Kepler Station in 6 hours." Cathara stepped forward. "Admiral, I need more time to study this information. I believe we may have discovered something that explains many recent events in the galaxy." "What kind of events?" the Admiral asked. Cathara looked at Captain Voss, who nodded for her to continue. "Sir, I have been comparing the human ships' data with galactic incident reports from the past 50 years. There are patterns that suggest human involvement in situations that were previously thought to be accidents or natural disasters." The Admiral's large eyes narrowed. "That is a serious accusation, Doctor. Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I need more time to verify what I am finding. If I am right, this could change everything we know about human activities in our space." Admiral Vexaran was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Very well, you have until you reach Kepler Station to complete your analysis. But once you arrive, all data must be turned over to the proper authorities." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in uncomfortable silence. "Doctor," Captain Voss said quietly, "you said you found patterns. What kind of patterns?" Cathara looked around the bridge at the concerned faces of her colleagues. "Come with me to the research lab. I will show you." Back in the lab, Cathara pulled up a galactic map on the large display screen. Red dots marked various locations throughout their sector of space. "Each of these marks represents a major incident in the past 50 years, she explained. Colony failures, plague outbreaks, technology accidents, civil wars, events that killed thousands or forced entire populations to abandon their homes. These things happen, said Telavi. Space is dangerous. Yes, but watch what happens when I add the human ship traffic data that I recovered. Cathara pressed a control and green lines appeared on the map. They showed the paths of human ships through space over the same time period. The room fell silent as everyone saw the pattern. Almost every red dot was connected to a green line. Human ships had been present at or near every major disaster. This could be coincidence, Engineer Takma said, but his voice sounded uncertain. I thought so too, Cathara replied. Until I found this. She opened a new file on her screen. It was a communication log from the human ship, heavily damaged but partially readable. This appears to be a report sent back to Earth, she said. Listen to this part. The Altarian colony failure proceeded as planned. Local population reduced by 73%. Survivors have requested human assistance with rebuilding. Efforts. Integration team will arrive next month. The blood drained from Telavi's face. The Altarian colony disaster had been one of the worst tragedies in recent memory. A plague had swept through the population, and only quick action by human medical teams had saved the survivors. They are claiming they caused the plague? Captain Voss asked. It looks that way, Cathara said. And there are similar references to other incidents. The mining accident on Vega Prime, the crop failure on New Thessaly, the computer virus that crippled the Rigel defense network. She opened file after file, each one containing references to human involvement in galactic disasters. But the most disturbing part was what came after each incident. In every case, Cathara continued. Humans arrived to help with the recovery. They provided aid, technology, and experts. They became trusted allies to the survivors. That sounds like a good thing, Talavi said hopefully. Look at this, Cathara said, showing them another map. This one displayed current human population centers throughout the galaxy. Almost every location matched with a previous disaster site. They are not just helping, she said quietly. They are replacing. Captain Voss studied the display with growing alarm. You are saying that humans are deliberately causing disasters so they can move into the affected areas? It appears that way, but it gets worse. Cathara pulled up another document. This file talks about something called the long game. It describes a plan that spans centuries, not years. The document outlined a strategy of gradual integration. Humans would identify promising star systems and species, then slowly insert themselves into those societies. They would cause problems that only humans could solve, making themselves indispensable. Over time, they would become the dominant force in each region without anyone realizing what was happening. This is just one ship, Takma said. How do we know this represents all human activity? Cathara opened her final file. It was a directory listing that showed hundreds of similar operations across the galaxy. Each one had a code name and target species. She scrolled through the list, reading names that corresponded to known colonies and civilizations. Operation Blue Garden, Zephyrian Colonies, she read aloud. Operation Silverstream, Altarian Systems. Operation Deep Root, Centauri Federation? She stopped scrolling when she reached an entry that made her heart race. Operation Final Harvest, all remaining species. Status, Preparation Phase. Estimated completion, 100 years. The room was completely silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. We have to warn the Council, Talavi whispered. The Council may already know, Captain Voss said grimly. Think about it. Humans have been members for 50 years. They have representatives in every major organization. How do we know who we can trust? Cathara was already thinking ahead. We need more proof. Solid evidence that cannot be dismissed or hidden. How do we get that? Takmas asked. By investigating the places where humans have provided assistance, she said. If my theory is correct, we should find evidence of their involvement in the original disasters. Captain Voss considered this for a moment. Our next stop is Kepler Station. It is one of the largest research facilities in this sector, and it has a significant human presence. According to these files, Cathara said, checking her data, Kepler Station experienced a major accident 15 years ago. The main reactor failed, killing thousands. Human engineers helped rebuild the facility. I remember that incident, Voss said. The humans were praised as heroes. They saved the station from complete destruction. Or, Cathara said quietly, they caused the problem in the first place and then made sure they were the ones to fix it. She began gathering the data files onto portable storage devices. If they were going to investigate further, they would need to be careful. If humans were really as dangerous as the evidence suggested, then anyone who discovered their secrets would be in great danger. Doctor, Talavi said as she watched her mentor work, what if you are wrong? What if humans really are just trying to help? Cathara paused in her work and looked at the young scientist. Then we will apologize for our suspicions and life. We'll continue as normal. And if you are right? Cathara returned to her data gathering. Then we are all in more danger than we ever imagined. And we may already be too late to do anything about it. As their ship moved through space toward Kepler Station, none of them knew that their communications had been monitored since they left the human vessel. Deep in the ship's computer systems, a small program was recording everything they said and did. And somewhere far away, other beings who appeared to be human but were something much more dangerous were already making plans to deal with the curious Zephyrian scientists who had learned too much. Kepler Station appeared on their view screen like a giant metal flower floating in space. Its many arms stretched out in all directions. each one housing different research facilities and living quarters. Dr. Cathara had visited the station many times before, but today it looked different to her. Now she saw it as a potential crime scene. Docking Bay 7 has been assigned to us, reported Communications Officer Zex. Station Control says a Council security team is waiting to meet. U.S. Captain Voss turned to Cathara. Are you ready to hand over the data? Cathara touched the small storage device hidden in her pocket. She had copied the most important files before creating the official data package for the Council. I am ready to give them what they expect to receive. The docking process took 20 minutes. As their ship settled into the bay, Cathara could see through the windows that a group of officials was indeed waiting for them. But what caught her attention was the figure standing slightly apart from the others. It was a human. Captain, she said quietly, do you see the human representative? Voss followed her gaze. The human was tall and thin, wearing the dark blue uniform of a Council security officer. He looked like any other official, but something about his presence made Cathara uncomfortable. Dr. Cathara, the human said, as soon as they exited their ship, I am Agent Martinez. I have been assigned to help with the transfer of your research materials. His voice was friendly and his smile seemed genuine, but Cathara noticed that his eyes never stopped moving. He was constantly looking around, watching everyone and everything. That is very kind, she replied carefully, but I can handle the transfer myself. I insist, Agent Martinez said. The Council wants to make sure nothing is lost or damaged. This data could be very important. Dr. Cathara handed over the prepared data storage device. Agent Martinez took it and immediately connected it to a portable scanner. This appears to be incomplete, he said after a moment. According to our records, the human ship contained much more information than this. I only included the files that seemed relevant to the Council's investigation, Cathara said. The rest was just routine ship operations data. Agent Martinez looked at her with those constantly moving eyes. I think it would be best if I came aboard your ship to verify that all important data has been transferred. Captain Voss stepped forward. That will not be necessary. Dr. Cathara is a respected scientist. If she says the relevant data has been provided, then that is what happened. Of course, Agent Martinez said, but his smile seemed less genuine now. I meant no disrespect. I am just being thorough. After the official meeting ended, Cathara and her team were given quarters on the station. They were told they would need to stay for several days while the Council reviewed their findings. I do not like this, Talavi said as they settled into their temporary rooms. Agent Martinez was watching us too closely. I noticed that too, Cathara replied. We need to be very careful about what we do next. Their plan was simple. While they waited for the Council's response, they would investigate Kepler Station itself. If humans had really caused the reactor accident 15 years ago, there might still be evidence somewhere on the station. The next morning, Cathara requested permission to visit the station's historical archives. She told the administrators that she was working on a research paper about the station's recovery from the reactor disaster. That was a terrible time, said Archivist Velther as she led Cathara through the record section. The elderly Zephyrian's hands shook slightly as she pulled files from the storage units. I was here when it happened. The explosion killed so many good people. What exactly caused the accident? Cathara asked. The official report said it was a cascade failure in the main reactor core, Velther replied. Several safety systems failed at the same time? The investigators said it was just bad luck, but you do not sound convinced. Velther looked around to make sure they were alone. The reactor had been working perfectly for 20 years. Then suddenly, in the space of a few hours, 7 different systems failed. It seemed too much to be just coincidence. She pulled out a thick file and handed it to Cathara. These are the original incident reports before the final investigation was completed. Cathara opened the file and began reading. The early reports painted a very different picture than the official conclusion. Several witnesses reported seeing unauthorized personnel near the reactor systems in the days before the accident. There were also mentions of strange new components that had been installed recently. Who installed these new components? Cathara asked. A human engineering team, Velther said. They were here as part of a technology exchange program. Very skilled, very helpful. They had been working on efficiency improvements to the reactor. Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. What happened to the reports that mentioned these irregularities? They were removed from the final investigation file, Velther said quietly. The lead investigator said they were not relevant to the accident cause. Who was the lead investigator? Velther hesitated before answering. Agent Martinez. Cathara tried to keep her expression neutral, but inside her mind was racing. The same human who had met them at the docking bay had been in charge of investigating the reactor accident, and he had removed evidence that pointed to human involvement. May I see the witness statements that were removed? She asked. Velther looked nervous. Those files are supposed to be classified now. I could get in trouble for showing them to. Please, Cathara said. It is very important. After a long moment, Velther led her to a secured storage area. She entered a code and pulled out several data chips. These are copies of the original statements, she whispered. I kept them because I felt the investigation was incomplete. But you must promise never to tell anyone where you got them. Cathara promised and took the data chips. Back in her quarters, she began reviewing the witness statements. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Multiple witnesses had seen the human engineering team working in restricted areas without proper authorization. They had been accessing systems that were not part of their official project. And most disturbing of all, several witnesses reported that the humans seemed to know exactly what would happen during the accident. One statement from a maintenance worker was particularly damning. The human engineer told me to make sure I was not in the lower levels during the night shift. He said there might be some system testing that could be dangerous. When I asked what kind of testing, he just smiled and said I should trust him. The accident had happened during the night shift, exactly as the human had predicted. Cathara was so absorbed in reading that she almost missed the soft sound of footsteps in the corridor outside her room. She quickly hid the data chips and opened her door slightly to look out. Agent Martinez was walking quietly down the hallway, stopping at each door to listen. When he reached her door, he paused for a long moment before continuing on. Cathara waited until he was gone, then immediately contacted Captain Voss on a secure channel. Captain, we have a problem, she whispered. I think Agent Martinez is monitoring us. What did you find out about the reactor accident? Voss asked. Cathara quickly summarized what she had learned from the archives. As she spoke, she could hear the concern in Captain Voss's voice growing. This is worse than we thought, he said. If humans are willing to kill thousands of people just to gain influence on a space station, what else might they be capable of? I need to access the station's current personnel records, Cathara said. If my theory is correct, humans should now hold key positions throughout the facility. How can you access those records? Telavi has been making friends with some of the younger staff members. She might be able to get us access to the administrative systems. 2 hours later, Telavi met Cathara in a maintenance area deep in the station. She had convinced a young technician named Caliph to help them access the personnel database. I told him we were working on a demographic study of multi-species work environments, Telavi explained. Kurlith was nervous but helpful. He connected them to a terminal that could access the station's records. What exactly are you looking for? He asked. We want to see how the station's population has changed since the reactor accident, Cathara said. The database revealed exactly what she had expected to find. Before the accident, humans had made up less than 2% of the station's population. Now they comprised nearly 20%, and they held positions in every critical department. Look at this, Telavi said, pointing to the screen. The head of engineering is human. The chief medical officer is human. The security director is human. And the station commander is human, Cathara added. Commander Sarah Chun. She remembered that name from the files on the derelict ship. Dr. Chun had been mentioned in connection with the modification experiments. There is something else, Carla said hesitantly. I am not supposed to know this, but there have been strange reports from other sections of the station. What kind of reports? Cathara asked. People disappearing for short periods and then returning with no memory of where they had been. Medical checkups that were not scheduled. Staff members acting differently after visiting certain areas of the station. Cathara felt her heart racing. Which areas? Mostly the sections that were rebuilt after the accident, Curlis said. The new medical facilities, the upgraded living quarters, the enhanced research labs. All areas that were designed and built by humans, Talavi said quietly. They were interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Carlith quickly disconnected them from the database and tried to look busy with routine maintenance work. Agent Martinez appeared in the doorway. Dr. Cathara, what a surprise to find you here. We were just taking a tour of the station's systems, she replied as calmly as she could. Talavi is interested in the engineering differences between Zephyrian and human designs. How fascinating, Agent Martinez said, but his eyes were focused on the computer terminal. I hope you are finding our facilities educational. Very much so, Cathara said. In fact, I was hoping to meet with Commander Chun. I understand she was involved in the rebuilding efforts after the reactor accident. Something flickered in Agent Martinez's eyes. I'm afraid Commander Chun is very busy with station operations. Perhaps I could help answer any questions you might have. Thank you, but I really need to speak with someone who was here during the reconstruction, Cathara pressed. For my research, you understand? Agent Martinez smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. Of course. I will see what I can arrange. After he left, Carlith looked terrified. I think I made a mistake helping you, he whispered. Agent Martinez has been asking questions about staff members who access systems they are not supposed to use. What kind of questions? Talave asked. He wants to know who has been looking at personnel records, historical files, things like that, and people who answer his questions. Some of them have started acting strangely afterward. Cathara realized they were running out of time. If Agent Martinez was actively hunting for people who were investigating human activities, then their cover would not last much longer. We need to get off this station, she told Televi quietly. Tonight. But as they made their way back to their quarters, Cathara noticed something that made her blood run cold. Every human they passed in the corridors was watching them. Not obviously, but their eyes would track their movement for just a moment too long. And all of those watching eyes had the same expression she had seen in Agent Martinez. Cold, calculating, and completely without emotion. They were not just being monitored anymore. They were being hunted. Back in her quarters, Cathara began making preparations to leave the station immediately. But when she tried to contact Captain Voss, she got no response. The communication system showed that her message had been delivered, but there was no reply. She tried calling Televi in the next room, but that communication was blocked as well. As the lights in her quarters dimmed for the station's night cycle, Cathara realized that they were trapped. The humans knew exactly what they had discovered, and they were not going to be allowed to leave Kepler Station alive. Outside her window, she could see their ship in the docking bay. But it might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy for all the good it would do them now. Dr. Cathara sat in the darkness of her quarters, waiting. The station's night cycle had begun 3 hours ago, but she could not sleep. Every small sound in the corridor outside made her jump. She knew they were coming for her soon, a soft chime from her computer made her heart race. Someone was trying to override her door lock. She quickly grabbed the hidden data chips and moved to the far corner of the room. The door slid open silently, and a figure entered. In the dim light, she could see it was not Agent Martinez. This person was shorter and moved differently. Dr. Cathara, whispered a familiar voice. It is me, Curlith. The young technician stepped into the light. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. Curlith, what are you doing here? She asked. I came to warn you, he said quietly, and to help you escape if I can. Warn me about what? Agent Martinez knows you have been investigating the reactor accident. He has ordered security teams to arrest you and your colleagues tonight. Cathara felt her stomach drop. What about Captain Voss and the others? They are already in custody, Kurlith said. I saw them being taken to the detention levels about an hour ago. We have to help them. We cannot, Kurlith said sadly. The detention levels are heavily guarded, and only senior staff can access them. But I might be able to get you off the station. How? There is a cargo transport leaving in 2 hours. I can hide you in one of the shipping containers, but we have to move now, Cathara thought quickly. If she left the station, she could get the evidence she had gathered to the Galactic Council. But if she left, her friends would remain prisoners. I cannot leave without my team, she said. Dr. Cathara, you do not understand, Kurlith said urgently. The humans are not just arresting people. They are doing something to them, something that changes them. What do you mean? The people who have been questioned by Agent Martinez, they come back different. They act normal, but their eyes look empty, like something important has been taken away. Before Cathara could respond, they heard footsteps in the corridor. Multiple sets of boots walking in perfect formation. Too late, Kurlith whispered. They are here. The door burst open and 6 figures in security uniforms entered the room. They moved with military precision, surrounding Cathara before she could react. In the light from the corridor, she could see their faces clearly. 4 of them were human. The other 2 appeared to be Zephyrian, but something about them seemed wrong. Their expressions were blank and their movements were too controlled. Dr. Cathara, said the lead human officer, you are under arrest for unauthorized access to classified materials. On whose authority? She demanded. Station Commander Chun has declared a security emergency, the officer replied. All suspects will be held for questioning. They placed restraints on her wrists and led her from the room. As they walked through the corridors, Cathara noticed that the station felt different. The usual sounds of activity were gone. The few people they encountered moved aside quickly and avoided making eye contact. The detention level was in the deepest part of the station, far from the main living areas. The walls here were thicker and the lights were dimmer. Cathara was taken to a small cell with no windows and only a narrow slot in the door. Someone will be along to question you shortly, the human officer said before sealing the door, alone. In the cell, Cathara tried to think of a way to escape, but the walls were solid metal and the door had no controls on the inside. She was trapped completely. After what felt like hours, the door opened again. Agent Martinez entered, followed by a woman in a commander's uniform. She was tall and elegant, with the kind of smile that looked friendly but felt dangerous. Dr. Cathara, the woman said, I am Commander Sarah Chun. I understand you have been conducting research about our station. I was studying the recovery efforts after the reactor accident, Cathara said carefully. Yes, I know, Commander Chun said. I also know that you have discovered certain inconsistencies in the official reports. She sat down across from Cathara at the small table in the center of the cell. Her movements were graceful and controlled, like a predator that was completely confident in its power. What I want to know, Chun continued, is how much you have shared with others. I do not understand what you mean. Commander Chun smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Dr. Cathara, there is no point in pretending. We know exactly what you found on the derelict ship. We know what files you accessed here on the station. We even know about the data chips you are hiding. Cathara tried to keep her expression neutral, but Ching seemed to read her thoughts anyway. Agent Martinez, Chun said without looking away. From Cathara, please retrieve the data chips from Dr. Cathara's pocket. Martinez stepped forward and searched her clothing. He found the hidden data chips immediately and handed them to Chun. Excellent, Chun said, examining the chips. Now, we can see exactly what evidence you have gathered. She connected one of the chips to a portable device and began scrolling through the files. As she read, her smile grew wider. You have been very thorough, she said approvingly. Most species would never have made these connections. But then, Zephyrians have always been more observant than average. What are you going to do with my team? Cathara asked. The same thing we are going to do with you, Chun replied. We are going to help you understand the truth about humanity's role in the galaxy. I think I understand it already. No, Chun said, standing up. You understand only a small part of it. You see the disasters, the infiltrations, the gradual takeover of key positions, but you do not see the bigger picture. She gestured for Cathara to follow her. They left the cell and walked deeper into the detention level. The corridors here were even more isolated, and Cathara could hear strange humming sounds coming from behind closed doors. What you discovered about the reactor. Accident was correct, Chun continued as they walked. We did cause it. Just as we caused the plague on Altair, the crop failures on New Thessaly, and dozens of other incidents. Why? Cathara asked. Why kill so many innocent people? Because, Chun said, stopping in front of a heavy door marked with warning symbols, innocent people do not learn, they do not adapt, they do not improve. She opened the door and gestured for Cathara to enter. Inside was a large laboratory filled with equipment that looked both medical and mechanical. Along the walls were dozens of chambers, each one containing a figure floating in strange liquid. Welcome to the future of galactic civilization, Chun said proudly. Cathara moved closer to one of the chambers and gasped. Inside was a being that appeared to be part Zephyrian and part human. Its body had been altered in ways that made her feel sick, but what frightened her most was that the creature's eyes were open and aware. This is Captain Voss, Chun said, pointing to another chamber. Cathara looked and saw her captain, but he had been changed. Extra limbs had been added to his body, and his skin had a metallic sheen. Tubes and wires connected him to the surrounding equipment. What have you done to him? She whispered. We have improved him, Chun replied. Enhanced his physical capabilities, upgraded his mental processes, and most importantly, aligned his goals with ours. You mean you have made him into a slave? Not a slave, Chun corrected, a partner. Captain Voss still has his memories and his personality, but now he also understands humanity's vision for the galaxy. She led Cathara to another section of the laboratory where different equipment was arranged. This area looked more like a data processing center than a medical facility. The physical modifications are only part of the process, Chun explained. The real breakthrough is in cognitive integration. We can preserve everything that makes a person who they are while adding new knowledge and new priorities. You are talking about mind control. I prefer to think of it as education, Chun said. Every species in the galaxy is limited by their evolutionary background. Zephyrians are too cautious. Altarians are too emotional. Centaurians are too rigid. But humans have learned to adapt beyond our original nature. She gestured to a wall display that showed a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked with different colored symbols. Each symbol represents a different stage of integration. She said, red markers show systems where we are still creating the conditions for intervention. Yellow markers indicate active integration projects. Green markers represent completed integrations. Cathara studied the map with growing horror. Nearly a quarter of the galaxy's inhabited systems showed green markers. You have been doing this for decades, she said. Longer than that, Chun replied. The project began over a century ago, long before humans officially joined the Galactic Council. What you call the Great Silence was actually the period when we were developing the integration technology. But why? What do you gain from controlling other species? Chin looked at her with an expression that was almost pitying. Dr. Cathara, you still do not understand. We are not controlling other species, we are saving them. She activated another display that showed detailed biological and social data for dozens of civilizations. Every species in the galaxy is doomed, she continued. Some will destroy themselves in wars. Others will be eliminated by environmental changes or resource depletion. A few might survive for a few more centuries, but eventually they will all face extinction. That is just speculation. No, it is mathematical certainty, Chun said firmly. We have analyzed the development patterns of every known civilization. The data is clear. Without intervention, 97% of current species will be extinct within 500 years. She turned to face Cathara directly. But with integration, they can survive indefinitely. Their knowledge and culture will be preserved. Their people will continue to exist, just in an improved form. Improved according to human standards. Improved according to survival standards, Chun corrected. Humans are not naturally superior to other species. But we have learned to change ourselves when change is necessary. That is the key to long-term survival. The door to the laboratory opened and Agent Martinez entered, followed by several human technicians. "Commander," he said, "the preparation. Chamber is ready for the next subject." Hyun nodded and turned back to Cathara. "Dr. Cathara, you have two choices. You can undergo the integration process willingly, in which case we will preserve as much of your original personality as possible. Or you can resist, and we will complete the process anyway, but with less favorable results. What about my research? What about warning the other species?" "Your research will become part of our database," Chun said. "As for warning others, that will no longer be a concern for you." She gestured to the technicians who began preparing a chamber for Cathara. "The process takes about 6 hours," Chun explained. "When you wake up, you will still be yourself, but you will also understand why our work is necessary. You will see that we are not conquering the galaxy, we are gardening it." As the technicians approached her with restraints, Cathara realized that she had discovered the truth too late. Humanity was not just another predator species. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that had learned to remake other species in their own image, convinced that they were saving the galaxy by destroying everything that made it diverse. The worst part was that they truly believed they were doing the right thing. As the restraints closed around her arms, Cathara wondered if anyone would ever discover what had really happened to her and her team, or if humanity would continue its slow, methodical transformation of the galaxy until nothing remained but different versions of themselves. The chamber door sealed shut, and the transformation process began. The transformation chamber filled with warm liquid that made Dr. Cathara feel drowsy. She could see Commander Chun watching through the viewing window as machines began their work on her body, but something was wrong with the process. Alarms started beeping, and Chun's confident expression changed to concern. "What is happening?" Hyun demanded as technicians rushed to their control panels. "The subject's biology is rejecting the integration matrix," one of them reported. "Her neural patterns are too complex for standard processing." "Impossible," Chun said. "We have successfully integrated dozens of Zephyrians." But Cathara was not unconscious as she was supposed to be. The sedatives were not working properly, and she could hear everything they were saying. More importantly, she could see that the chamber's emergency release was flashing red. The liquid around her began to drain as the machines shut down automatically. Within minutes, she was lying on the chamber floor, coughing up the strange fluid, but otherwise unharmed. "Get her out of there," Trin ordered. "We will try a different approach." As the technicians opened the chamber, Cathara pretended to be more affected than she really was. She let them carry her to a medical table while secretly listening to their conversations. "Commander," Agent Martinez said quietly, "we have another problem. The cargo transport that left 2 hours ago is not responding to communications." "What do you mean?" Chun asked. "The ship was supposed to check in once it cleared the station's sensor range." "We have heard nothing." Chun's face grew dark. "Send a patrol ship to investigate immediately." But it was too late. At that moment, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the station. The main communication system crackled to life with an announcement that made Chun's face turn pale. "This is Admiral Vexeron of the Galactic Council Fleet," the voice said. "Kepler Station is surrounded. All personnel are to remain in their current locations. Any attempt to leave the station or destroy evidence will be met with force." Chun grabbed a communication device. "Admiral, this is Commander Chun. I do not understand why you have surrounded my station." Commander Chun, the Admiral's voice, replied, "We have received detailed information about illegal experiments being conducted on your station. We are here to investigate and arrest those responsible." Chun looked around the laboratory with growing panic. "Agent Martinez, how could they know about our operations?" "I do not know, Commander. Our security has been perfect." But Cathara knew. Kurlith had not just been trying to help her escape. He had been gathering evidence of the human activities on the station. The cargo transport that was not responding must have been carrying that evidence to the Galactic Council. All human. "Personnel on Kepler Station are to report to the main docking bay immediately," Admiral Vexeron announced. "Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council." Chun made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. Instead of trying to hide the evidence, she activated the station's main communication array. "Attention all. Ships and stations in this sector," she broadcast. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Human Integration Project. Our operations on Kepler Station have been discovered, but our mission continues." Cathara watched in amazement as Chun calmly began revealing everything. She told the galaxy about the integration chambers, the hybrid beings, and humanity's plan to transform all other species. "We are not your enemies," Chun said into the microphone. "We are your salvation. Every species in the galaxy is doomed to extinction without our help. We offer you the chance to evolve beyond your biological limitations." The response was immediate and violent. Communication channels across the galaxy erupted with angry voices as species realized they had been living among human infiltrators for decades. "You will be hunted down," came one transmission from a Centauri commander. "Every human in our space will be arrested or destroyed." "This is an act of war," declared an Altarian admiral. "We will not allow you to poison our people with your twisted science." But Shun seemed pleased with the reaction. "You see?" she said to the technicians around her. "They respond with violence and hatred just as we predicted. This proves that they are not ready for voluntary integration." Agent Martinez was monitoring multiple communication channels. "Commander, human ships are moving throughout the galaxy. It appears that sleeper cells are activating everywhere." "Excellent," Chun said. "Begin Phase 2 immediately." Cathara did not understand what Phase 2 meant until she started hearing the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human agents who had been living quietly among other species for years were suddenly taking action. But they were not attacking military targets or government buildings. Instead, they were targeting infrastructure. Power plants, water treatment facilities, food distribution centers, and communication networks were all failing simultaneously on dozens of worlds. "What are you doing?" Cathara demanded. Chun turned to her with that same cold smile. "We are creating the conditions for rescue. When their basic services fail, when their people start dying, they will beg for our help." The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. By destroying essential systems, humans would force other species to accept human assistance or face mass casualties. And the humans would be the only ones with the technology and knowledge needed to repair the damage. "But this will kill millions of innocent people," Cathara said. "Millions will die," Chun agreed. "But billions will survive in improved form. The mathematics are quite clear." As reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy, Cathara began to understand the true scope of human preparation. This was not a spontaneous plan. This was a coordinated operation that had been in development for over a century. Human agents had infiltrated every major civilization. They had studied the technology, mapped the infrastructure, and identified the critical points of failure. When the time came to act, they knew exactly what to target for maximum effect. "The beautiful part," Chun explained as she watched the chaos unfold, "is that most species will never realize what really happened. They will think it was just a series of unfortunate accidents and system failures. When we arrive to help, they will see us as heroes, not conquerors." But not all species were fooled. The Galactic Council fleet surrounding Kepler Station was just the beginning. As word spread about human activities, other fleets began moving to protect their territories. "Commander, Agent Martinez reported with concern. "We are receiving reports of human colonies under attack. The Zephyrian Third Fleet has destroyed the research station at Rigel 7. The Altarian Navy is moving against our facilities in the Vega system." For the first time, Chun looked worried. "How many of our people are at those locations?" "Over 10,000 at Rigel 7 alone." Chun was quiet for a moment. Then she made another broadcast to the galaxy. "To all species currently attacking human installations," she said. "You are making a serious mistake. We have embedded agents throughout your civilizations. If you continue these attacks, we will be forced to activate additional sleeper cells." The threat was clear. Attack human facilities and more infrastructure would be destroyed on your homeworlds. But the threat backfired. Instead of discouraging attacks, it made other species even more determined to eliminate the human presence. If humans had agents everywhere, then the only solution was to find and remove them all. What followed was a period of galactic paranoia unlike anything in recorded history. Species turned against their own citizens, searching for human infiltrators. Anyone who acted strangely or had unexplained knowledge was suspected of being a hybrid or agent. "This is not what we planned," Agent Martinez said as he watched the reports of violence spreading across the galaxy. "It is exactly what we planned," Chun corrected him. "We knew that species would react with fear and violence when the truth was revealed. This chaos will make them more dependent on strong leadership, but Chane had miscalculated. The chaos was not making species more willing to accept human help. Instead, it was uniting them against a common enemy." "Commander," came a new voice over the communication system. "This is Captain Zareth of the Combined Species Alliance. We have formed a coalition to address the human threat." Cathara recognized the name. Captain Zareth was a legendary military leader who had helped end several major conflicts through negotiation rather than violence. "We offer humanity one chance to end this peacefully," Zareth continued. "Withdraw all agents from our territories, cease all integration activities, and submit to galactic oversight of your remaining colonies." Chun laughed. "Captain Zareth, you do not understand the situation. We have been preparing for this moment for over a century. Your coalition cannot stop what we have already set in motion." "Perhaps not," Zareth replied. "But we can certainly try." Within hours, reports began coming in of successful raids on human facilities. The coalition had managed to capture several integration laboratories and had rescued hundreds of partially transformed beings. More importantly, they had found detailed records of human operations throughout the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "Commander," Agent Martinez said urgently, "our communications are being jammed. All human ships and facilities are reporting that they cannot reach us." Chun finally began to look concerned. "What about the Phase 3 protocols?" "We cannot activate them without central coordination. The jamming is too effective." Cathara did not know what Phase 3 involved, but she could see that its failure was causing panic among the human staff. "Dr. Cathara," Chun said suddenly, "you understand biology better than most. Tell me, what happens to a species that becomes too specialized for its environment?" "It becomes extinct when the environment changes," Cathara replied. "Exactly," Chun said with a bitter smile. "Humanity became very good at adapting and manipulating other species. But we forgot how to survive when those other species unite against us." The final blow came 12 hours later. Captain Zareth made another broadcast to the galaxy, but this time he was not speaking to humans. He was speaking to the human-created hybrids who were still loyal to their original species. "To all beings who have been changed by human science," he said, "we know that you retain memories of your original lives. We know that part of you still cares about your homeworlds and your people. Help us, and we will help you find a way back to who you were." The response was immediate. Hybrid beings throughout the galaxy began sabotaging human operations from within. They provided access codes, revealed hidden facilities, and helped rescue other prisoners. "It is over," Agent Martinez said as he watched their entire network collapse in real time. Jin stood in silence for a long moment, watching the destruction of everything she had worked to build. "No," she said finally, "it is not over, it is just postponed." She turned to Cathara one last time. "Dr. Cathara, you have won this battle, but humanity does not give up easily. We will find another way, another approach, we always do." "Perhaps," Cathara said. "But now the galaxy knows what you are capable of. We will be watching." As Galactic Council security forces finally broke into the laboratory, Cathara felt a mixture of relief and sadness. They had stopped humanity's integration project, but at a terrible cost. Millions had died in the infrastructure attacks, and thousands more had been permanently changed by the human experiments. The galaxy would never be the same. Trust between species had been shattered, and fear of infiltration would influence decisions for generations to come. But they had learned an important lesson. Humanity's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their ability to hide among other species depended on those species not knowing what to look for. Now everyone knew, and humans would never again have the advantage of surprise. As Cathara was helped from the laboratory by Council security, she wondered what would happen to the remaining human colonies. Some called for their complete destruction, but others argued for containment and monitoring. The debate would continue for years. But one thing was certain: humanity's dream of quietly reshaping the galaxy had ended. From now on, they would have to find a different way to survive among the stars. Whether that way would be peaceful or violent remained to be seen.